I think I had a little plane funk, and then I came home to like allergy season in Nashville. So,
Let's rock.
hey kids, this is John Corabi from the Dead Daisies. Let's rock. Turn it up.
Welcome back to Let's Rock. This is our fourth chat. I think we've had three before this. It's good to have you. And I listened to the album yesterday, the new album, Looking For Trouble, coming out, May 30th, I think.
30th.
Yeah, so we still got a couple months before release date. Before we talk about the album, there's a couple things I wanted to ask you. First of all, how's Doug? How's he doing?
Doug's great, man. We just did the run in Europe. He's back. He was raring to go. Luckily he caught the shit early, and took care of everything he needed to take care of. And he had plenty of time to, rest and recoup. And, we're good. We're getting up there in age. Both Doug had surgery, and then I had surgery in January. Unbeknownst to me, I went to the doctor and I had a double hernia.
Oh.
So I got that sorted out. You know what I mean? But luckily Doug caught his thing early, and he was awesome, man. It was Doug. You know what I mean?
Yep. So he's clear for now. All's good.
Yeah, he looks great, sounds great. He was funny and kidding around, and like same old Doug. You know what I mean? It was awesome.
Excellent.
Good to have him back.
Absolutely.
And the audience every night, I made it a point, because I introduced all the guys in the band, briefly, whatever. And I would say to the audience, ain't it great to have this fucker back again, and they would just go absolutely ape shit. So he felt it. He couldn't thank everybody enough for all their messages and love and support. And, but he's feeling great. He looked great. He played his ass off, and we're looking forward to the next chapter.
Nice. And props to Reb Beach for stepping in for a short while there. That's top marks right there.
Yeah. And, obviously Doug and Reb have known each other for years, and he was conveniently already in Europe. He knew he was going to be there. So we just sent him some live tapes, and he made his notes, and he came in and he kicked ass. It was great.
Awesome. He's a fantastic guitar player.
Yeah, and a funny dude. He's great to have around. So it was cool.
That's even more important a lot of the times, isn't it?
Yeah, because I mean, in all honesty, I say this to everybody. At the end of the day, the thing that's so cool about the Daisies is I get to create music and get on a plane and go tour the world with like four of my best friends. So getting along is kind of important. We all have our quirks. We all kid around with each other. Everybody's got their little thing. But we get along great, and it's easy to be on the road with these guys for extended period of time when you like them.
Absolutely.
So it makes it very easy.
Sure. Now, the other thing before the album is you have a new Daisy in town. You have a new drummer.
Well, no, actually, Tommy Clefetos is still playing with us. The thing with it's funny. Just prior to doing the two records that we did, Light 'Em Up and the blues record, we didn't really have a drummer. Brian had gone off to do the Gene Simmons thing. So we used Marty's son, who actually conveniently was there anyway. He was helping Marty. He was engineering everything for Marty but he's a great drummer. The kid. You know what? Now that I think about it, I want to punch the kid in the throat because he's so fucking talented at everything. Um, so he was there. So we had started mapping everything out with the Light 'Em Up record, and Evan was just there. So we were just getting Evan to, excuse me, lay down tracks so we could rehearse and map the songs out. And then when we went back and listened to it, we're like, well, this fucking sounds great. You know what I mean? Let's just keep that. And then we had talked to Sarah Tomek. Um, Once we started goofing off and jamming, Sarah had done some stuff with Steven Tyler, and also we called her up and asked her to come down to Muscle Shoals and lay some drum tracks down for the blues record. But and then we had worked with Tommy. They had worked with Tommy and Glenn before in the past, and Tommy actually, the first tour that I did with the Daisies back in 2015, Tommy actually did the first half of the Kiss tour with us. So he was just like, once we knew Brian was going to do the Gene thing, we called Tommy and asked him to come in and step in and whatever, play the live shows.
Okay.
Sorry, I got home and I'm dealing with allergies. Like the allergies here in Nashville right now are just ridiculous. So I apologize about my coughing and sneezing.
All good. All good. Okay, so she recorded on the album, but she's not touring.
No.
Okay, got it. Okay. So now let's talk about this album. I listened to it, Looking for Trouble. It's all classic blues cover songs.
Yep.
Uh, where did this come from? I mean, first of all, it sounds fantastic. So
Thank you.
congratulations on that. Um, I knew you had this in you, by the way. Always thought you had a super bluesy voice, and I knew you could. When I heard it was a blues album coming out, I knew you could crush this one. But where did the idea come from for this?
To be honest with you, once we went down to, because we started recording at Marty's, that's where we started mapping out a lot of the songs for Light 'Em Up. And then we went down to Muscle Shoals. We were telling our manager, like, we had all seen that documentary on Netflix about the Muscle Shoals sound. And so we went down there, you know, and we were doing some writing and, like I said, mapping stuff out. Um, we could only go down to Muscle Shoals for like 9 days or so. And it was really just to be able to say that we recorded there. So we went down and um, it's really weird. Like the Fame Studios is a functioning studio, but it's also a museum. So if anybody watching this ever gets a chance to go to Muscle Shoals, Alabama, they can go there. It's cool. They have T-shirts and all this stuff, but they take you around the studio and they show you, where Aretha Franklin and Wilson Pickett, Otis Redding, all these legendary singers and musicians played. Duane Allman was discovered there to a degree. That's where he played the, excuse me, legendary guitar solo on Wilson Pickett's version of Hey Jude.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're literally sitting there, we're looking at all these old photos and all the old equipment and just all the stuff. And, at night it would be a little bit of a, we'd take a dinner break and then Marty or our manager would walk around. There was a liquor store right across the street from the studio. We'd go get some wine, whiskey, whatever. And we just start drinking. And, it's one of those things where it's like, oh, hey, what do you know? What do you know? What do you know? and we started jamming on, Crossroads and uh, I'm going down, and and Marty had the foresight to just keep the session rolling and started recording some of the stuff. And when we went back and listened to it, we're like, wow, this is actually pretty good, you know. So we said, we made the commitment. All right, you know what? Let's record some of this stuff. We called Sarah, asked Sarah to come down with us, and you know, we just got to work. And so during the day, we'd work on uh, Light 'Em Up. At night, we'd work on Looking for Trouble, and we were able to knock out both records, um, in like a month.
Wow, that's incredible. So it was all recorded live?
Yeah, most of the blues record, it's funny. Like, there's a couple little overdubs here and there, like if somebody hit a bum note or whatever. But for the most part, that's just recorded off the floor. And there's even a couple of vocals, like, when we get back up to Nashville, there was a few songs that I wanted to re-sing, and but there was a couple that I was like, oh, hey, I need to sing this, and Marty goes, nah, dude, I like what you did when we recorded it, just leave it. So a lot of that stuff is just live off the floor, you know. Um, Obviously things like, if we added percussion or whatever, but there's even, Marty was even doing some percussion stuff while we were tracking. So, it was all, there's, like I said, a few overdubs, but like for example, harmonica solos
Right.
I play, but Michael's better at harmonica than I am. So we'd leave those spots blank, and then he'd go back in and just blow a quick harmonica solo, and you know, so stuff like that. But it's pretty much live off the floor.
That's amazing. You mentioned some of the people that recorded at that place. You forgot one of the big and most important ones, the
Which,
Osmonds.
yes, and it's funny. The reason why we did it, there's a little bit of a history there. Like if you've ever seen that documentary,
I did.
um, obviously as a kid, Leonard Skinner's like, Muscle Shoals has got the Swampers. I'm like, what the fuck does that mean? Like, what does that mean? Well, as you get older, you realize it was the house band at Fame Studios.
Right.
Well, part of the reason why we did this is, if you've been following the band, we've done a few records with Marty here in Nashville. So the first studio was Fame. That's where we did the Looking for Trouble record. And then a couple of the Swampers left and started another studio across town on I believe it's called Jackson Highway. And that became equally as famous with, like, that's where the Stones recorded Gimme Shelter, Wild Horses. Bob Seger recorded there. Um, who else? Rod Stewart, just a long list of people. Well, then that one became as equally as famous, and then a couple of the guys left that studio and came up to Nashville.
Oh, really?
Yes, and the studio they started was called Quad, which is the studio that Marty bought when he moved to Nashville.
Holy.
So, in some to some degree, the Daisies have been a part of that Muscle Shoals thing from the very beginning. We did Make Some Noise, Burn It Down, and Light 'Em Up in Marty's studio. And the studio that we recorded in, Neil Young recorded Harvest in. So there's all this, just history between those three studios, which I kind of feel like we went back to the beginning and then came back and finished at Marty's. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Now, it might sound like a weird question, but I've heard this before. When people walk into Abbey Road or Muscle Shoals, they kind of feel a vibe. They feel like a presence of all the people who have been there before. Did you feel that?
A little bit, and I think you can't help but, I mean, you're sitting around and you're looking at pictures of Dwayne Allman, you know, 18-year-old, 19-year-old Dwayne Allman, whatever he was, playing the guitar solo on Hey Jude for Wilson Pickett. I apologize, dude, about this thing. I mean, it's
Oh,
like these,
good. It's all good, man.
um, but even one of the studios in that building, it was almost like the Allman Brothers room. And I'm looking around and I'm like, what's the deal with this? Like, you know, oh, so this guy Spencer, um, he was like, oh, the Allman Brothers would rehearse here right before like every tour. And I'm like, fuck, which is, I kind of think that's where the blues thing came from, because we were kind of even fucking around with Whipping Post. You know what I mean? Um, so you sit there and you look at it, and I just, and I've been asked this question a few times, but I remember my first time playing at the Whiskey in LA. And as you're walking on stage for the first time ever, you're sitting there telling yourself, the Doors played here. Three Dog Night, like, was discovered here. And this is where Robert Plant stood on the first Zeppelin tour of North America. He was right here. Um, I had that feeling at CBGB's. I played there with Union. I just did an acoustic set with Winger and Tom Kiefer at the Ryman Theater in Nashville. And it was sold out. And it was just like, you kind of get a little bit of the heebie-jeebies. You're like, oh man, Elvis stood here.
Oh,
You know what I mean? So yeah, there's a little bit of an energy or a vibe or something, but that's just, I just chalk that up to being, yeah, I've been very blessed to be, make money my whole life playing music, but I'm still a fan, man. I still get the, I'm looking at these old photos and shit at Fame Studios. I was like a kid in a candy store. You know what I mean?
right. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Didn't I think I read one time that Dwayne Allman just like pitched a tent outside that studio waiting for someone to find him and
Yeah, it was like he'd heard some recordings or something, and he just went there. He's like, I'm going to go there. And he just kind of hung out. And they finally said, all right, you know what? Fuck, just get in here. Let me see what you got, kid. And and that's where he was kind of discovered.
that's amazing. That's really
So yeah, it's pretty intense, dude. Like, and I remember too, even I was just saying this earlier, I was doing a vocal and I was in the vocal booth, and there's obviously a big glass window, and the guys were breaking off onto a solo part, and I'm just sitting there looking at the wall, and I'm standing there with a whiskey and a cigarette, singing into this old microphone, and I look up at the wall, and there's a photo of Aretha Franklin with a whiskey and a cigarette, singing in the same microphone. You know
cool.
what I mean? I'm like, okay, this is trippy. You, you know what I mean? So it was pretty cool.
That's awesome. Um, what did this music? I mean, oh, we should let people know that this is old classic blues like Robert Johnson, um,
Yeah.
Howlin' Wolf. We're not talking Stevie Ray Vaughan and Eric Clapton. We're talking a long time ago. And what did this music mean to you when you were younger, when you were growing up? Did you listen to this then?
No, but yes.
From somebody
Uh,
else onto you.
yes. And that's the beauty. And it's really hilarious because I literally just watched a documentary on Brian Jones and the Rolling Stones. And they talk about them doing blues music when they first started. Brian was like the catalyst to doing this blues stuff. But the funny thing is, they were like, all the English cats were discovering this Robert Johnson, Muddy Waters, Lead Belly, like just all these crazy fucking blues shit that was right here in America, but we just didn't take notice to it. You know what I mean? And it was, bands like the Stones and Zeppelin and all these cats that brought it over back over and reintroduced it to um, American youth. And I remember even they did a TV show, and I don't know if it was in America or was in England, but they did the TV show and they insisted that Howlin' Wolf do the show with them. And so they kind of introduced him to this younger audience, you know what I mean? Um, but it's really funny because I grew up listening to Zeppelin, and you listen to, like, for example, Zeppelin 4, and there's this unbelievably powerful song called When the Levee Breaks. And then you realize, like, oh, that was written in 1929 by a lady called Memphis Minnie. And they kept the lyrics and the melody, but they put all new music to it. And In My Time of Dying, another one. I grew up, I can't tell you how many times, like, when I saw Foghat on the Don Kirshner's rock concert back in the day doing I Just Want to Make Love to You, I was like, oh, fuck, Foghat, you know. But it was unbelievable how many of their songs were just blues covers. You know what I mean? Um, Another one was Terraplane Blues, which is another song that we were going to try and redo for this record. And, uh, so our introduction to blues was through the 70s, you know, mainly British artists that came over and were hugely successful. And they turned us onto the blues. You know what I mean? So that's hence a lot of the song choices that we picked were songs that were actually made popular by 70s artists. Little Red Rooster, The Stones, Crossroads was Cream and Skinner, Walking the Dog, Aerosmith. You know what I mean? It's just, and that was our introduction to these artists. But it was like, then once you get into it and you really start doing some digging, you're like, fuck, there's so much shit here. Then
Wow.
you start getting into the, Delaney and Bonnie and Come On In My Kitchen and, all the stuff that Eric Clapton covered. And it's just brilliant.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you added the three kings, by the way. BB, Freddie, and Albert.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
I think they kind of paved the way for everybody. I think without those three guys, there wouldn't have been the more modern, Eric Clapton, Stevie Ray Vaughan blues.
Yeah. And it's funny. Like, I don't think most people realize just how, you know, like, I don't understand. Like, a lot of people are like kind of scratching their head, like, why'd you guys do a blues record? It's like, why wouldn't we? Name me, other than classical music, one genre of music, you know, that if you look at if you look at the fucking tree, the blues are the roots. And then, it was like, then country went this way and rock and roll went that way. And then off of rock and roll and then R&B and funk and just But it all started with the blues. And other than classical music, I think the blues has influenced every genre of music. So why wouldn't we?
Yeah. I mean, all your albums sound bluesy, right? All the Daisies albums sound bluesy, even
Yeah,
before.
I mean there's elements to it. I mean, we have some stuff that's a little on the funky side or a little punky or whatever, but all that shit, dude, like I don't give a shit what music, like, if even if you look at the Ramones as punky and aggressive and, you know, it's like what's their chord structure? A D E. It's blues. If you look at Johnny Cash, I hear that train a coming, rolling round the bend, da 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 da, and it's a blues tune. So, this was a happy accident for us. Um, Glad it worked out. Um, and we were even kidding. We were like, man, it'd be killer to do like a volume two. So I don't know where this is going to go. So far, the response that we've been getting has been unbelievable. So we'll see what happens, but it's just a tip of the hat. We always do a tip of the hat on our records to the bands that we grew up listening to. Now, this is a tip of the hat to the bands that they grew up listening to and
That's
the artists they grew up listening to.
that's awesome. And everything for anyone who has not heard this, which is everyone probably, it's it's very daisified, is what I call it. It's not just a straight up cover, it's just daisified. Um, I guess when you've been around as long as you guys have together, everything you play becomes a Dead Daisies sounding song.
Well, Doug's got a signature sound and a signature way of playing. Um, I'm not Paul Rogers or Robert Plant, but I've got I guess, a thing. Um, but you put the four of us, five of us in a room together, and it's like eventually, and then with Marty as well, it's gonna, But we actually, to be honest with you, that was probably the only intentional thing that we did was, um, I know some people may listen to this record and go, oh, they're not using Telecasters and Strats and old vintage Tweed amps. You know what I mean? But we didn't even we kind of intentionally, when we were arranging these songs, and Marty kind of spearheaded it. It was like, why would you record? Like, we could have done, for example, Crossroads. We could have done Crossroads exactly like Skinner or exactly like Cream, but we're like, no, what would Zeppelin do? And love him or hate him, I know even Zeppelin kind of got a lot of grief in the beginning of their career for bastardizing a lot of these songs. But we're like, I think when you listen to the original When the Levee Breaks and then listen to what Zeppelin did to it, it's brilliant.
I agree.
And when you listen to, which is weird because this is one of the things that I kind of figured out. Another song that we were kicking around was In My Time of Dying. And you listen to Zeppelin's version, and then you go back and you're like, oh, who wrote this and where did this come from? And you start doing the research. Well, the song initially, I believe, was called Jesus Make My Dying Bed. Uh, that was like way back in, the 30s or whenever the hell it was written. And it's funny because Robert Plant actually says that, um, in their version. He goes, well, Jesus, make my dying, you know what I mean? He says it. But then you go back and you're like, oh shit, Bob Dylan did this too. And I was really kind of discovering other things that I didn't even know existed. So I listened to Dylan's version of In My Time of Dying, and I got to be honest with you, I think Dylan's version is the best of all of them. It's
Wow.
pretty fucking cool. Just his approach, it's not heavy like Zeppelin. It's just like this really badass acoustic guitar thing, and his performance is brilliant. So, um, our thing was, let's not do it exactly like the guys that we grew up listening. Let's take this somewhere else. Hence, if you've listened to the record, you realize on Crossroads, we did it. We actually added a part. There's like a little kind of chorus or bridge or whatever you want to call it. We added, and probably sacrilege to some, but we're like, no, I was reading the lyrics and I go, well, I know what the legend is, that Robert Johnson went to Crossroads in Mississippi and sold his soul. Doesn't really say that in the song. So Marty and I sat and wrote this extra bridge section where we just went, I remember the day where I lost my way. I was down in the hole. I sold my soul at the crossroads. Just to help the legend, uh, give the legend a little clarity.
Sure. Wow,
But
that's
we,
cool.
we, we just had fun with it, man. You know what I mean?
You have a songwriting credit on Crossroads now.
I don't think we took it, but we just we did our thing, whatever.
Rapid fire. Pew, 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 pew.
So rapid fire, just quick, stupid answers, stupid questions, that kind of thing. So we're talking about the blues. Who are your top two or three classic blues guys?
I mean, you can't, Robert Johnson, you got to, I mean, in the short amount of time that guy was, you know what I mean? I would say Robert Johnson. um, I got to go Robert Johnson, BB King, and I became much more aware of Lead Belly. So I liked a lot of stuff that he did as well. So I'll say those three.
Okay. Now I'm going to put you on the spot big time. Just for fun these days, I'm going through the Rolling Stone top 500 albums of all time. I'm listening to every album from beginning to end, from number one to number 500, just for kicks. Um, their number one is Marvin Gaye's "What's Going On." What's your
Okay.
what's your number one?
Uh, wow, that's
It's
a
an
good one.
impossible question to answer, but what's up there?
No, I'm gonna go, because I think for me, the band that really just sealed my fate with music, that just didn't understand what I was hearing, didn't understand why I was feeling the feelings I was, you know, um, I'm gonna say Abbey Road by the Beatles. Um, I think the songs on that record, and then when you listen to that medley on side two, you're just like, I don't know what fucking planet these guys were on, but that's just, that was four guys really firing on all cylinders. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, and one last question for you. Um, you mentioned earlier that you're not just a singer and a musician for your whole life, but you're also a huge fan. Which guy that you met in all your years kind of made you go, "Holy shit, I'm meeting this guy"?
That would be a toss up between Steven Tyler and Robert Plant.
Yikes.
Yeah, I met Robert Plant in Vancouver, Canada, and actually that's where I met Steven the first time as well. So I was just like, that was like my, fanboy, didn't know what to say, didn't know how to act. do I check my watch or wipe my ass? I was like, oh my God, like I am in the presence. I'm literally breathing the same air as Robert Plant and Steven Tyler. So that was my two.
Okay, so let's sum this up. Looking for Trouble, coming out May 30th. All blues covers. You're going to tour for this, I imagine.
I would hope so.
Coming up to Canada again. Speaking of how your memory is, Brass Monkey in Ottawa. Remember
Yes.
that place?
Yes, I do.
You got to get back up there, man.
Yeah, I do. I love that place. I've been up there a few times, and um, I have a I have a I kid around with a lot of the Canadians. I go, man, every fucking I could come up here in August and you guys will get some freak snowstorm. But yeah, I love going up to Canada. Everybody's been very, very supportive throughout my career. So my first show ever, I believe, was in 1990 or 91 with the Bullet Boys at a place called Rock and Roll Heaven. I think
Toronto?
it was in Toronto.
Yeah, yeah. That's a famous place.
Yes.
Wow.
So
Your
Canada's
first show
always been
ever?
cool in my book. What now?
Your first show ever was in Toronto?
Well, as
Your
a
first.
recording artist, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Wow, that's
yeah,
cool.
yeah. It was the Scream and the Bullet Boys
Wow.
in 1991, 90 or 91.
Jesus.
Yeah,
Can you believe you've been doing this for 35 years?
I have to pinch myself sometimes because you know, I look. We all get a little dark once in a while. Glass half empty instead of half full. Um, and I'm no different. But I have to pinch myself sometimes because I know people, even guys that I played with back in Philadelphia when I was growing up, and I still talk with them, and they're like, dude, I'm living vicariously through you. I sold my guitar, I got married, I had kids, got a job, but we're pals, you know what I mean? And I sit there and I go, I looked up to these guys. These guys were like way more talented than I ever was. And just whether it was persistence, luck, whatever, here I am. I've not only had one record deal, I had one with the Scream, one with Motley, one with Union, my own solo deal, all the shit with the Daisies. I was in Rat when they got offered another record deal. So I've been very blessed. I think I've done, I don't know, 16 or 17 records, full albums in my career, and I'm still going, man. So it's definitely better than delivering pizza, and I do feel very blessed on a daily basis.